Namaskar and welcome back to Media Scan, your weekend dose of headlines, controversies and perspectives. We have just completed the best month for vaccination in the country and it's getting better by the day. But the situation in Afghanistan continues to be a cause of worry. So let's check out what made news. August has proved to be the best month so far in India's ambitious Vaccine for All drive. Till last reports came in, 54% of our eligible population was already inoculated with at least one dose. And what's more, in states like Himachal Pradesh, the entire adult population has received at least one jab. With the pace picking up fast, it's only going to get better every day. With India in the chair, United Nations Security Council adopted a resolution on Afghanistan earlier this week. The resolution stressed upon the Taliban to keep their commitment of preventing terror goods in Afghan soil and facilitate the evacuation of all Afghan nationals who wish to leave the country. The resolution demanded that Afghan territory not be used to attack or threaten any country or shelter and train terrorists who plan or fund any attacks. Meanwhile, Indian envoy in Qatar, Deepak Mittal, met Taliban's head of political office, Sher Mohammad Abbas Tanikzai. The discussion was focused on the safe and early return of stranded Indians and also minorities who wish to travel to India. Gross domestic product (GDP) recorded an impressive 20.1% acceleration in the first quarter of the year as per data released this week. Some experts have pointed at the weak base during the corresponding period last year, but the fact remains that this rebound has come despite the devastating second wave of the COVID pandemic. The implosion in the Congress party is now spreading to more states with each passing week. The drift in the states ruled by the party has now started showing up even where the party is in opposition, such as Assam and Kerala. All through the week, media was abuzz about how the efforts of the central leadership failed to yield any concrete results. Our special panel of guests this evening will take us further on this and help us understand what's going on in just a few moments. From javelin throw to high jump to shooting, the Indian contingent shone in the Tokyo Paralympics like never before. With medal showers resembling the monsoon closer home, a new hunger is visible among Indians to scale greater heights in sports. Prime Minister Narendra Modi made it a point to speak to the winners in Tokyo and compliment them for their rare achievements despite so many challenges. So those were the headlines which you saw all through the week in the media circles. Viewers, currently there are 3 states where the Congress party is ruling on its own: Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh and Punjab. Not just this week, for the past several weeks you have been watching and reading in the media how the chief ministers of the Congress are being openly challenged by leaders from within the party. In some states like Punjab, it's an open free-for-all, whereas in some others like Rajasthan, the pot continues to keep boiling and it might blow up any moment. Not just that, if you think that the Congress is being challenged or facing and fighting only in the states where it is ruling, we may have to remember that in states like Kerala and Assam, where the party is in the opposition, there too, there is a kind of unease and revolt brewing within the party organization. What's more, every time the central leadership of the Congress, call it the High Command, has tried to resolve issues, things have gotten worse than ever. What does this mean for the Congress at a time when the party claims it is trying to bring together the entire opposition under one tent and challenge the Modi government? To understand all this, I have a very special panel of guests here with me who will try to take us down the road in order to understand what all this means for the main opposition party of the country and what will be the way forward. Will things get any better or are there more challenges down the road? Let me introduce my guests for the evening. I have here with me my first guest, Daniel Francis, a well-known analyst, commentator, who has been a Congress watcher for a very, very long time, Welcome, Daniel Francis, especially because this is your first appearance on Media Scan.
Gives me great pleasure to join you.
I also have with me Shekhar Iyer, senior journalist, political analyst, commentator. You have been watching and hearing him on Doordarshan for a long time. Welcome back to Media Scan, Shekhar Iyer.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Smitaji.
So with one regular Congress watcher and a person who understands the party better than many others and a senior political analyst, I am sure we are going to have a very interesting discussion this evening on what the current state of things means for the Congress party. I would like to come to Daniel Francis here first. Daniel Francis, during the recently concluded monsoon session of Parliament and even post the session, we saw some efforts which was being picked up by the media very seriously, how the Congress party is trying to give the image or the impression of being a leading political party which is trying to bring all opposition camps and various regional powers under one tent because it thinks this is the right time to forge opposition unity and challenge the Modi government. On the other side, we have all been seeing the headlines, hearing on television debates, reading in newspapers, digital media, what is going on in the whole Congress party. So at a time when the Congress wants to give the image of an opposition unity, how do you look at the developments in Rajasthan, in Punjab, in Chhattisgarh? What do you think it means for the party?
Smitaji, there are two things that you asked me. One is the optics behind the Congress trying to unite opposition parties under its tent. And if we see the exercise after the Parliament session or during the Parliament session, we saw multiple lunches and dinners hosted by different parties. We had Mamata Banerjee coming in. We had Sonia Gandhi hosting, a meeting. We had Rahul Gandhi hosting a breakfast. We had there's a group between the Congress called the G23 hosting a dinner. And
so precisely because of that, my question, Daniel, is what do you think lies behind these optics? We've had enough of those optics, but what do they mean vis-a-vis the developments in the states? If
you look at it from the point of view of what lies behind these optics in Delhi, it is nothing but confusion. The Congress wants to become the leader of the opposition parties, but opposition parties are not really kind of backing it with full strength. They are kind of meeting them, greeting them, but they are not recognizing the Congress or its leadership as the leadership that can take on the Modi government in Delhi. Whereas where it goes in the state, if you see, you rightly pointed out what's happening in the three states that they rule and the states that they are in opposition. The Congress looks like these state units look like they are on their own. They are fighting amongst themselves. They have nobody to look after. I also feel that somewhere they are not able to accept the moral authority of what's called the Congress.
So do you want to say that the reason the regional powers or other opposition parties are reluctant to accept the Congress as their leader could also be because of the kind of things that are happening in the states? I mean, it fails to inspire confidence, doesn't it?
No, I've been speaking to many regional parties, including their allies, and they feel that if you see for example, you take Shiv Sena's performance in Maharashtra is better than the Congress. If you take the TMC's performance is better than the Congress in West Bengal. There are other states in which they have these soft allies and like-minded parties, which are better performances than the Congress in the state. They don't care about whether the Congress is nationally strong or weak, but they understand one thing, that in their states they are the number one parties.
So okay, I think there is much more to understand here, particularly about the fact, that regional parties, other opposition parties in most of their states are doing a better job of doing politics than the Congress party. I'll come back on to that question because there are other aspects related to it. But allow me to bring in Shekhar Iyer here. Shekhar Iyer, if you have been following, like all of us, the developments in the Congress and the media's treatment of the subject, you would have noticed that most of the editorials, op-ed columns, and the commentaries in television debate, the one thing that political watchers have been pointing out is there may be issues in various states, but there may be issues in various states, but there is certainly something wrong in the central leadership, and most newspaper editorials have actually blamed squarely the central leadership of the party, call it high command if you like, for the principal reason for things not working on track in the states. Do you agree with that view? And what, in your opinion, is actually lying behind this turmoil?
Yes, Smitaji, you have brought out a very, very important dimension of this current crisis in the Congress, which is a lot to do with the way Rahul Gandhi and his sister Priyanka Gandhi are actually now taking decisions and trying to sort out these various problems in their states that are under their rule and states where they are in the opposition. Now, the big question that is being raised, if you look at all the editorials that have come, is at a time when the Congress should be actually gearing up to play its role as a very important national party, what we are seeing is some of the choices that Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi have taken on behalf of what we may call the Congress High Command has resulted in a very, very peculiar situation. Take, for instance, Punjab. Now, Punjab was supposed to be doing very well under Captain Amrinder Singh, but the internal decisions were, the dissensions were rather led by Navjot Singh Sidhu, who somehow managed to get an audience with the High Command, that is with Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi, and he had his way, and baffling everybody, baffling every watcher, he was appointed the president of the Punjab Pradesh Congress Committee. Now, initially there was a lot of enthusiasm among MLAs, hoping that Sidhu will perhaps take everyone along and things may change. But in a matter of weeks, we are seeing that already things are in a turmoil. And today, Sidhu seems to be rather isolated because one of his advisors, 5 advisors he appointed, one advisor has resigned because the High Command directed him to...
So, Shekhar Iyer, allow me to interrupt you here, Mr. Iyer. Are you saying that it is the central command of the party which is trying to fan revolt by propping up and promoting leaders who are challenging their respective chief ministers? Or do you think it was an error of judgment on the part of the central leadership which didn't go the way it was intended to do?
Yeah, lot of indicators are towards not just error of judgment, the very process of decision making. See, what the Congress should have attempted is, at least from Rahul Gandhi, from the leadership point of view, is to somehow put the Congress back as a fighting machine, to somehow face the assembly elections, which are hardly 6 months away. Instead of that, the baiter, rather the chief dissident of Amrinder Singh is made PCC chief. And instead of, starting from day one towards, fortifying the Congress position, we saw him taking sniping shots at the chief minister.
So let me get a comment from Daniel here. I'll get a comment from Daniel Francis and I'll come back to you. Mr. Francis, from what Shekhar has commented, it looks like it may not be just a case of error of judgment. It may also be a case of warped priorities, for the central leadership of the Congress, particularly Mr. Rahul Gandhi. Do you think that's a fair comment, a fair assessment? And what do you think lies behind this strange move of propping up people who challenge their own chief ministers, and this way they try to, derail their own state governments?
No, we have seen that kind of culture in the Congress earlier also, but that was a different age where the Congress was very popular. You had a strong national leader in Indira Gandhi and so on and so forth, and she would take on regional satraps, and Sanjay Gandhi would come and change chief ministers overnight. Rajiv Gandhi would have his own way. So we have seen all these things happening, but this is not the time to do it. One is not just error of judgment and a poor judgment. It's suicidal because, sometimes you feel that, are you really looking at the state of affairs of a national party that has been around for 135 years? this party looks like a party run by political novice, run by people who have no political judgment at all. Okay, I understand you want to remove Captain Amrinder Singh, you want to ease him out. But you didn't ease out Gogoi, you didn't ease out Sheila Dikshit, you didn't ease out many old chief ministers who stuck there and ruined the chances of you coming back. You did not allow younger leadership to come in. Here you allow some younger leadership to come in, and you allow it in the form of somebody who's an absolute outsider.
Let me just get a comment from Shekhar Iyer also, from, taking a cue from what you have just pointed out. Shekhar Iyer, Daniel Francis is saying that, fanning infighting and, pitching one camp against another is not something new to the Congress culture. It has been happening for decades, actually. But that was a different India. It was a different kind of politics in India. And so they used to somehow manage to, still be in the charge of things, despite all that infighting and groupism and all that. Today, things are not the same. So do you think, to put it in the, to look at the larger picture of things, it seems that the Congress party, its culture, its thinking, its political style has not been able to keep up with the changing times in Indian politics. And perhaps that is why they may have the best of intentions, but they find themselves not really being up to it. Would you agree with that?
I would think so, because see, in the case of Punjab, now the whole thing is boiled down to Rajiv Gandhi's style of management. I mean, Rahul Gandhi's style of management, along with Priyanka Gandhi, because these two people are now really in command. They are taking decisions. In Punjab, they wanted to prepare the Congress to face the elections because Amrinder is completing his second term, so they are worried whether Amrinder can successfully get them the third term. So you had to bring in a new leadership. Now, but whom did you choose? A person who was already said to be in talks with the leading opposition in Punjab, Aam Aadmi Party. Even now, what has happened is, after some decisions have been taken, the Sidhu is again said to be upset because he could not get an audience with Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi again to put his case. Now, similarly in Chhattisgarh, there was a formula accepted when the Congress won power that for 2.5 years it will be the Baghel will be the chief minister, and after that it will go over to Singhdeo. Now, obviously,
give me a second, Shekhar Iyer, but even that is quite foggy, because we don't really know if that formula was there. The chief minister says there was no such commitment. Mr. Singhdeo says it was very much there. It's all quite vague.
No, but how do you account for the reports that were coming when the Chhattisgarh chief minister met Rahul Gandhi? The story started coming that Rahul Gandhi has asked Baghel to make way for another leader. So at that time, what we saw was Baghel completely, bringing his MLAs, showing a show of strength. Then the next day we hear is that the Baghel has managed to convince Rahul Gandhi that lot of development work has taken place in Chhattisgarh, and Rahul Gandhi himself will visit Chhattisgarh to supervise it. So
right.
That goes on to show that, when you are handling states like Chhattisgarh or Punjab, or even in Assam. See, Assam, they take the case of Sushmita De. Why did she have to leave the party? After all, she was heading the Congress Mahila Morcha. Now, she decides to go away. Now, after that, we hear that Congress has decided to end this understanding with the minority front.
AUDF.
Now, because that was a sore point in which Sushmita De felt that Congress had given a lot of seats to this minority front, resulting in Congress not winning enough seats. So it boils down to decision-making process, the views of Rahul Gandhi, and his now new assertiveness to show that he is in command. That is in conflict with lot of what younger leaders of the Congress in these states are feeling. So therefore,
and perhaps that is why we have seen this exodus of young leadership from the Congress party. At a time when the party should have been able to, keep its young leadership, the flock together, particularly the young faces.
Indeed, because, see, Rahul Gandhi has not returned back to the post he held, almost 2 years ago. He had resigned as Congress president following the devastating Lok Sabha results. After that, his mother is continuing as interim Congress chief. Now we are at some new arrangements are being made in which possibly Priyanka Gandhi could become the Congress vice president and Rahul Gandhi will continue to be a Congress working committee member, but still, calling the shots. Now, in this scenario, where definitely all decisions that are taking place in the Congress have the authority of the Rahul Gandhi, so it is very important how the decisions are taken and whether it is helping the Congress.
That is one issue that is being given in the media, being floated in the media continuously, and people have spoken very candidly on it. Mr. Francis, the point raised by Shekhar Iyer here has become, the moot point in this entire scenario, and that is the mess here at the center. The Congress not having a clear, definite leadership for 2 years now, more than 2 years rather, and then nobody seems to be knowing which way it will go. Do you think at a point when we are going to have some very important assembly elections in 1 or 2 years down the line, and then the country will be getting ready for a new round of Lok Sabha elections, what do you think this lack of clarity of a clear leader in the central leadership and all the issues, all the mess that goes with it, what do you think it means for the Congress when it has to start preparing for 2024? And what kind of a message do you think it will give to the rest of the opposition? What should be the way forward for the party? How can it try to come out of this rut, this complete confusion that is prevailing? Mr. Francis?
I'll tell you one thing very interesting, Smitaji. When I talk to congressmen across the country, they tell me that now they are not even, so much concerned about what's happening in Delhi. They are only concerned about their own region. They are only concerned about their own state, and they're trying to work it out for themselves there. Imagine the state of affairs of a party like this that doesn't have a permanent president for the last 2 years. It doesn't have a roadmap to have a permanent president. But this president or vice president is a very small part of the problem. You have to actually address this problem in a very big way. What is your leadership model now? Has your leadership model failed? Do you make place for younger people, more competent people, more talented people to take over the party and give direction to it? What is it that you really want to do?
Are you saying, Daniel Francis, are you saying that it's not just, trying patchwork solutions in one state or the other state or even in the center? The Congress now needs to go for a complete revamp, a kind of haul up in the organizational. Should it be structural? Should it be political? What are you saying?
Smitaji, if a party of the stature of the Congress loses the election the way it lost in 2014,
yes,
okay, and there are parties all over the world which have had these experiments, including the Janasangh, which dissolved itself to form the BJP. It gave a new identity to itself. It gave a new political social program to itself. It emerged as a party of a nationalist party, of the future of India. And it gave up a lot of its baggage that it came with Janasangh, the identities that it had, and played a different ball game, completely different ball game. Congress in 2014, not now, should have sat together and assessed leadership, policy, outreach, organization, political and economic and social issues. What are their stands? What are their programs? They should have assessed all these things. And
so is the party in a mental frame to go for such a huge revamp, a complete overhaul, as you are saying?
I think the party has potential because it's a party. We cannot deny that the Congress is a national organization. The only problem is that the party that is headed by the Gandhis, particularly Rahul and Priyanka, is now in 21st century political India is run like a family-run business. And in family-run businesses, what happens is that, you just keep on promoting your children at the cost of your business. And while I'm giving this corporate analogy, and I've seen a lot of family-run businesses have come out of their bankruptcies because they have acquired talent, they have given new vision, new roadmaps to their organizations and revived and brought relevance to themselves. This is an organization that is, old wine in the old bottle, doesn't want to experiment, doesn't want to give new people chance, and the kind of people they back are not people who can get them back to power.
Okay, point
and those
taken.
who get back,
Point
back to
taken.
power.
I'll just take a very quick final comment from Shekhar Iyer because I'm running out of time completely this evening. I would have liked this conversation to go on for a little while more. Shekhar Iyer, do you agree with what Daniel Francis is saying about the fact that, you know, with this issue of dynasty and promoting children has been discussed and done to death actually in Indian politics? But he seems to believe that dynasty by itself may not be a complete, the only problem. He has given the example of corporate houses. If at all the dynasty is ready to go with the times, trying to change itself also and promote the right kind of leadership in the party, I mean, do you think there is merit in that argument? What is your view?
No, definitely there is, you know, see the Congress party is connected to a dynasty. I mean, that is indisputable. If you remove the Gandhis from the party will not be the same again. So that is not the issue. The issue is how the leader from the dynasty is managing affairs. Today, Rahul Gandhi is upset with the Congress party, and the party rank and file is upset with Rahul Gandhi. Now, this is the situation. Now, how to get out of this? Either because Rahul Gandhi feels the leaders who are in the states, the central leaders, senior leaders, that they have not only failed the party, but they are also responsible for the debacle of 2014 and 2019. So he has been part of that. Similarly, the rank and file feel that Rahul Gandhi has, you know, not acted with full passion, with full interest, and has allowed the time to be lost. The party has been a state of drift. Now, who will arrest this drift? So naturally, the buck has to stop with the people who are in command. So that has not happened. That is
right.
Right.
I'm afraid, Shekhar Iyer, I'll have to interrupt you here because I've completely run out of time this evening. So perhaps we'll carry on this conversation some other weekend very soon. One thing, viewers, has become very clear from the analysis of both our guests, and that is, first of all, it may be a myopic view, and it may be quite naive to lay the blame on the state leaders and the chief ministers or state leadership, because it is actually the central leadership that the Congress organization is looking at. And if the problem starts or the buck stops, either way, it starts and it ends with the central leadership of the Congress party. Daniel and Shekhar, both of them have also underscored the point that while dynasty is a cause, dynasty by itself is not the only reason, provided the leadership had tried to understand and revamp its organization according to the changing times, the aspirational India, the politics of the new India, the mindset of the people who are not ready to go with the old school politics. They are looking at much more in their lives. Putting old wine in old bottle is certainly not going to work. Even putting old wine in a new bottle may not work. We might need a complete revamp and overhaul of things if we are to move with the times. That is the message for the Congress party from both our guests here. On that note, viewers, I must profusely thank both my guests this evening, Daniel Francis and Shekhar Iyer, for helping us understand this complex issue so well and making it so very clear for us. With that, viewers, it's time to wind up for the evening. So let me wrap up here, but do keep watching DD India as we continue to scan the media for you. Good night.